Good morning. Yikes. To begin with, and as my disclaimer, I didn't volunteer for this. Bill roped me into it, and it took a couple of years of him pushing me at that. And then there's this certain employee that I have that stood up here a year ago and did a magnificent job. And she's been walking around the office throwing gauntlets around. So I kind of had to give this a whirl. So here we go. I'm going to share today some lessons that I'm learning, present tense, from observations and experiences I've had, in particular from my effort to grow towards a more intentional service above self perspective in my faith walk. Make no mistake, I'm not where I want to be, and for that matter, I don't think I ever will be. But it's a continuous improvement in that direction that I seek. Please also make no mistake about my intent with this sermon. With my comments, I do not intend any judgments about how or at what pace a person engages in their walk. That's a very personal matter between each of us and our good Lord. More so, I hope to share experiences that I've had on my walk, how they've impacted me, with the hope that some of you will be able to identify with the feelings and experiences I've had. Perhaps you'll even be able to take something away for yourself. I don't believe what I've been experiencing is unique, but it has been material for me, and I'm thinking that maybe some of the apprehensions and fears I've wrestled with might be similar to ones you're experiencing. On the other hand, I might just be setting myself up for another yet humiliating public experience. Lesson number 1. My first lesson, the topic is judging. My first lesson with volunteering arose from an encounter at the Boys and Girls Clubs in Cleveland. It was 1985. I was 30, recently married, and Diane and I had Kristen on the way. I was also, in many measures, a relatively successful young man and was self-absorbed in my feeling that I had earned all of the privileges I was enjoying in life. At the time, I was working with my father, who was a successful salesman and a very active volunteer in his own right. He had told me that I needed to get involved in a charity, any charity, but just get involved. He was a wise man. One of my brothers was active at the Boys and Girls Clubs of Cleveland, so I saw in front of me a very easy introduction to the organization. If you don't know their model, they serve inner-city kids at risk with after-school programming, teaching them life skills that they, unfortunately, are not learning at home, helping them to become productive community members when they grow up. For the most part, the kids served by the Boys and Girls Clubs are poor and from African American and Hispanic descent, not the kind of kids I grew up with in Aurora or at university school. I was as intimidated as one could imagine when I arrived on site, fully expecting to have a young, street-savvy child approach me and ask me what I was doing out of my neighborhood. Instead, I experienced kids who were accustomed to adults that didn't come to the table with baggage, adults that were empathetic and secure enough to engage them openly and honestly. Here were kids that came from worlds I couldn't even imagine, and they weren't prejudging me. Yet I had come to the table with a host of prejudgments and stereotypes of my own. It took me a couple of years to digest it, but the lesson I learned from this experience was that the block was in my mind, not theirs. It caused me to begin a pattern of self-examination that challenged the self-absorbed world I was living. I was learning that it wasn't all about me. This prejudging thing can be really powerful, and I believe it happens more often than we would like to admit. Our culture is filled with reality shows and selfies that promote self-interest. Candidly, I think this aspect of our culture is why Donald Trump is such a powerful figure. Adding political commentary into my sermon is a luxury I'm enjoying. I know it's a taboo, but I won't be up here next week to suffer the consequences. So I believe judging people is a form of indulgence in selfishness, and it is very easy for all of us to do. Think about walking into a room filled with folks you haven't met. How easy it is to make quick stereotype assessments about the people in the room. Those quick scans of people are based on nothing more than superficial visual snapshots, and they will materially impact the conversations and more often than not cause harm, more harm than good. I believe these come from a self-centered perspective and can be kept at bay with an intentional, outwardly focused perspective. The judging theme has played over and over again for me, most recently in my volunteering activity with the Fuller Center, which many of you may know as Neighbor to Neighbor. We changed our name. We're now the Fuller Center. Through the Fuller Center, I have been most fortunate to walk briefly along the path with some very wonderful souls. Every once in a while, however, I would come across the path of someone that wasn't receiving the help in the way we were providing it or intending it. And their response was not something that I was looking for. And there's that word again, me. It isn't supposed to be about me. It's about serving them and how they are gaining from the experience. The tearful hugs from folks we serve are really wonderful, but I'm learning that the gratification I get really doesn't matter. It's about what they get. Yes, we've been taken advantage of by a few, but that doesn't mean we didn't help that person, and quite possibly we planted a seed that will take root and grow in our absence. So again, it's not my position to judge. How do I know that I wouldn't scratch and claw for any handout I could get if I were in the same circumstances as some of the folks we get to be with? Lesson 2, appreciating the importance of hope. I never understood the power of hope until I came across people that didn't have it. I've been very fortunate to have been raised in a family, thank you, Mom, where hope was instilled in us as children. Hope for a better world, hope that good will prevail. This hope in turn instilled the motivation to drive and work towards the same. A few years ago, I had the blessing of getting relatively close to a husband and wife that were caring for their 4 grandchildren in a single-wide trailer on a very limited income. We thought we were there to fix up the bathroom, and we soon found that God put us in a position to do much more. We learned that the mother of the 4 children was in prison for some bad stuff. The father of 2 of them was no longer alive, and the other father was also in prison. The grandmother was what we quickly found to be the person that was holding the family together, which was on the brink of losing the children to foster care. We found ourselves more and more focused on looking for ways to lift her up. Several of us worked on the trailer bathroom on nights and weekends over a couple of weeks, but when we finished the bathroom, we just couldn't leave. 4 kids between 9 and 16 were living in rooms that had no sheets, no shelves or dressers, no doors, all in a single-wide trailer where the grandmother and grandfather slept on the couches, and the grandfather was a chain smoker. So it was brutal for us being in there for that short period of time. Over the course of about 6 months, to make the story a little shorter, we ended up getting them into a new trailer, complete with beds and sheets and furniture, supplied the kids with a bountiful Christmas, got 2 of them active in a local church, and most importantly, instilled a sense of hope for the future by showing them that someone cared. Never would have imagined going in to repair a bathroom having that kind of an outcome. I know the family was meaningfully impacted, but I was even more so from witnessing God's grace on them. Lesson 3, better than I deserve. So you know when you greet people and you say, hey, how you doing? I'm doing fine. Well, about 3 years ago, I ran into somebody that responded better than I deserve to that question. And it just kind of resonated with me. At first, I thought it was a little catchy. And then I realized that it was something that I really wanted to adopt. This is now my response, and it serves to remind me of an intentional walk that I'm on, one that I need to own. My experiences serving folks that didn't get such a fortunate draw in life has helped me understand the perspective that it wasn't me that got me here. It was by the grace of God. And that I don't deserve it. I'm not going to get choked up on this. And that I have a responsibility to do something with it. Reminding myself of that every time someone says, hey, how you doing? It, for me, is helpful. Lesson 4. A long while back, when I was learning a life lesson from a wonderful friend named Janine Carroll Brown, I was exposed to a book about the value of building margin in my life. Margin for reflection, margin for prayer, margin to listen to God's will, and margin to figure out how to assimilate that will into my own walk. For me, serving folks that are doing their best to manage tough circumstances jumpstarts my own pause from the fast pace of life. Pause to think about how I would cope with their situations. Pause to reflect on how my troubles compare to those of others. And pause to be grateful. So in a very real way, instead of packing my life up with more busy stuff, ergo the excuse, oh, I can't do that because I've got too many things going on, the experience of serving others actually has had the exact opposite effect I would have expected. Who would have thought? Lesson 5, trust in God. So one of the wonderful things for me about being on a Christian walk is that I don't have to worry that I always get it right, but just that I am headed in the right direction and I'm remaining open to learning and growing through experiences that He puts in front of me. To this point, I've come to realize that there's a very real element of trust that I wasn't conscious of, but that I, in a very real way, place in God that gives me the courage to walk into a situation that would have otherwise been real foreign and real scary. Lesson 6. When I pray, I always include a prayer of thanks for the ability to serve others in need. It's because I really do get so much more out of my volunteer experiences than I put into them, which again is the antithesis of what I ever would have expected. I'm grateful for the people that I get to meet, for the ever so rich lessons that God is showing me through those experiences, for a most productive way to keep my ego in check. I should have put that one first. And for the ability to make a difference. Better yet, God has been constructing a sensitivity meter of sorts that helps me recognize my poor behavior and catch it earlier. I definitely don't catch it all the time. Some of you are just itching to jump up and claim that. But the perspective of gratitude has a very real effect for me of keeping my ego in check. And the sense, and also keeping in check the sense that I somehow deserve something in my own right. For a guy that battles self-absorption, this is a wonderful thing. God's ability to open doors for us through service above self truly knows no bounds. It's my personal experience that the path of service above self is profoundly rewarding. I am most grateful, again, to have been able to share my experiences with you today. Let us rise as we sing hymn 315. Thank you.